Hello, sixth graders. We are starting lesson 6.5 today on finding the percent of a number. Let's make sure we are on page 374, following along as we go. You're going to want to take some notes today to help you with your work afterwards. Our essential question today is, how can you find percents? Let's look at example 1, estimate and find percent. So the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders at Great Oak School are taking a field trip. Of the 575 students attending the field trip, how many are 6th graders? If we look over here at our pie chart, we see 6th grade is this pinkish color, and there's 36%. So we need to figure out what 36% of 575 students would be. Now, something that's going to be super helpful, if you think back to when we were doing some of our multiplying fractions, we learned that of means to multiply. So if I know of means to multiply and I want 36% of 575, I know I'm going to be doing some multiplying. Before we get to the actual, we're going to make an estimate though, and we can use this double line graph. If I look here, I'm trying to find 36% of 575. So if I'm doing an estimate, I know that 36% is about 1/3. So I'm going to put 1/3 on my number line. And then 575 is about 600. So I would want to put my 600 on my 100%. Now I need to figure out 1/3 of 600. So remember, if I do 600 times 1/3, or of 1/3, I know that's the same as doing 600 divided by the reciprocal. So I'm just doing 600 divided by 3. 600 divided by 3 is 200. So now I know my answer should be about 200. So I can check it once I've solved. All right, here we're going to find the actual now. So I have my percent, 36% of 575. Something you need to do before you can multiply with that word of is we have to change our percent to a decimal. Because we have that percent symbol, we can't do any multiplying when there's a symbol there. So we have to change it to the decimal form. We learned last lesson and last week that if we take our percent, 36, and we just divide by 100 or move our decimal twice, that gives us our decimal number. So we can whoop, whoop. Now I know it's going to be 36 hundredths of 575, or 36 hundredths times 575. All right, we got to get used to multiplying with decimals again. I know it's been a while, so let's try it. We have 575 times, remember when you're multiplying by a decimal, you just want to multiply them as whole numbers first. So I'm getting rid of that decimal. I'm just multiplying 575 times 36. Now I have 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 7 is 42, plus 3 is 45. 6 times 5 is 30, plus 4 is 34. I'm done with those. Now I'm putting my 0 here because I'm in the tens place. I have 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 7 is 21, plus 1 is 22. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 2 is 17. Now I'm going to add my partial products. 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 5 is 10. 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 2 is 7. 3 plus 7 is 10, and 1 plus 1 is 2. Now that I have my answer to 20,700, I have to look back and see when I got rid of my decimal, how many spots were after that decimal. So I would have moved it once, twice, which means I have to move it back 2 times. So I'm going to take that decimal from the end. I need to put it back 2 times. Whoop, whoop. So now I have 207 as my answer. And if I have 207, I'm comparing that to my estimate of 200. So I know it's close to each other, so my answer is reasonable. So there would be 207 sixth graders. 207 would be 36% of 575. Let's look at our try it. Suppose 68% of the students attending the field trip were boys. How can you use the double number line diagram above to find the number of boys and check whether your answer is reasonable? So if I take 68%, I know that's pretty close to 2/3, so I can put 2/3 on my number line. Now I'm taking that, our number 600, and it's 2/3 of 600, so I'm multiplying it by 2/3. I take 600 times 2 is 1200. 1 times 3 is 3. I'm dividing 1200 by 3. I know 12 divided by 3 is 4, and then I have 2 zeros, so it would be 400 is my estimate. Now I can use that to compare it to the actual. I need 68% of 575. If I want my 68 as a decimal, I need to whoop whoop. Now I got 68 hundredths of, which means times, 575. So again, we have to do a little bit of our multiplication, writing it as whole numbers first. So my 575 stays the same. I'm changing my 68 hundredths to a whole number, so just times 68. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 7 is 56, plus 4 is 60. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 6 is 46. Put my 0 for the tens place. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 7 is 42, plus 3 is 45. 6 times 5 is 30, plus 4 is 34. Now I'm adding my partial products. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 6 plus 5 is 11. 4 plus 1 is 5. Plus 4 is 9. Bring down my 3. So now I end up with 39,100. But I have to remember that I changed my second number to a decimal. That was 2 spots, so I have to move it back 2 spots. Sorry, I realized you probably couldn't see that whole thing. So now I have my decimal here, moving it back, whoop, whoop, 2 spots. I get 391 as my answer. If I compare that to my estimate of 400, that's pretty close, so I think that is reasonable. We're going to take a short brain break so you can take a look at some of the memes that your classmates created a couple weeks ago when I challenged you to make some math memes. We got some good ones, so let's take a look. All right, those are pretty good. Now we're at example 2. Let's keep going. We're going to find the part of a number. So we have Dwayne plans to wallpaper 72.5% of a 60 square foot wall. How many square feet of the wall does Dwayne plan to wallpaper? So we're finding 72.5% of 60. So remember, when you have your percent, in order to change it to a decimal, you're dividing by 100. So whoop, whoop, we end up with 725 thousandths. If I'm finding that percent of 60, that means I'm multiplying it by 60. So I'm taking my 725 times 60. 0 times 5 is 0. I don't even really have to do this one because they're all zeros. Then I'm going to put my 0 for the tens place. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 2 is 12. Plus 3 is 15. 6 times 7 is 42. Plus 1 is 43. Adding them together, 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 5 is 5. And then I have my 3 and my 4. So I end up with 43,500. I moved my decimal 1, 2, 3 spots this time when I changed it back to a whole number. So I have to change it whoop, whoop, whoop 3 times to change it back. And I end up with 43.5 square feet. Let's try another one. We want, here's a tricky one. We want 0.8% of 35. So again, we know of means multiply, so we're going to do something times 35. I need 0.8% or 0.8%. So again, we're going to start with our 0.8. Since I want it as a decimal, I have to divide by 100. So whoop, whoop. Now I have 0 and 8 thousandths times 35. So I'm going to take that 35 times 8, because I just want it as a whole number. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 4 is 28. And then if I look, when I made my 8 into a whole number to multiply it, I would have moved it 1, 2, 3 times. So I have to move it back 3 times. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So now I know that 0.8% of 35 would be 28 hundredths. Let's take another quick brain break to look at some more of those great math memes you made. Time to finish up example 3, finding the percent. This time we want to find what percent of 92 is 11.5. So this one's a little bit different. We're finding the percent of a number. So I can think of it as, again, we're multiplying, but this time I don't know what my percent is. So percent of is going to be percent multiplied by our number 92, and we know it needs to equal 11.5. So percent of 92 is 11.5. I want to know what that percent is. So I'm going to multiply my P times 92. I want to get that unknown variable by itself. So in order to do that, I have to undo the multiplication by dividing. If I divide this side by 92, I also divide this side by 92. And now I have 11.5 divided by 92. All right. We are letting you use letting you use your calculators when we're dividing by decimals. So if you type it into your calculator, I know it's already solved in the book, but we would take our 11.5 divided by 92. We get an answer of 125 thousandths. All right, once I get that, I have to change it back into a percent because I want a percent. So I would whoop, whoop, times my 100. I get 12.5%. So now I know 11.5 is 12.5% of 92. All right, let's do one more percent of a number, or try it. What percent of 120 is 72? So I need to find my percent of 120, and it's going to equal 72. So if I take, right now I have P times 120. I need to undo the multiplication, so I'm going to divide by 120. That gets rid of it. Then I'm dividing by 120 on this side. Now I have P equals, let's type it into our calculator, 72 divided by 120. We end up with 6/10. All right, but I don't want a decimal, I want a percent. So I'm going to take my decimal and multiply by 100 to get my percent. Whoop, whoop. Now I know it's 60%. All right, I will have your work on the end of here for you so you can see what you're working on today. Make sure if you have questions, you're asking for help. If there's anything you're stuck on, I can help you when I'm back on Friday. Taking your time, doing your best work.